everyone, welcome to this video. Today I'm going to give you a tour of my new Google Sheets Net Worth Tracker spreadsheet. This is going to be a very detailed video. I'm going to start with a blank template, the way it looks like when you first receive it, and I'm going to walk you through how you fill out every single one of these sections, and then I'm going to talk about the features and automations that are included. If you would rather watch a shorter video just to get a general idea of how everything works, I'm going to leave a link to a quick tour video in the description down below. And if you don't have the template already, you can also find a link to purchase it in the description. So let's get into it. This is what the template looks like when you first receive it. As you can see, every single section is completely blank. All totals are zeros. There are no graphs, there are no summaries, and this section is completely empty. Something important to keep in mind while you're watching the video and using the template is that you should only edit cells that have a white background. If a cell has a colored background, that means there's a formula in it, there's an automation in it, and you should not edit that cell. So as you can see, there's only a few white cells, and those are the ones where you should add your information. So let's start filling out our white cells. The very first thing you're going to do is you're going to brainstorm, and I suggest that you do this on paper first. And what you're going to do is you're going to make a list of all of your assets and all of your liabilities, and then you're going to figure out how you can group them into big categories. And those big categories is what you're going to add in this section over here. So I'm going to start by adding my first category, which is going to be savings. And as you can see, as soon as I type in the category name, if you scroll down, you're going to see that this section got filled out with that same name. And if I do that again, I'm going to add cash, for example. If I scroll down, that same title is going to be added in the second section right here. So the same order in which you add your categories is the same order in which they're going to get filled out in every single one of these individual sections down below. So again, if I add short-term investments, you're going to see that this got filled out. And super important, you need to decide the order in which you want these categories to appear before you move on to the next step. Because once you start adding individual assets and liabilities and you start adding balances, you're not going to be able to change this order easily. So before you move on to the next step, you need to make sure that this is the order in which you want your categories to appear. So I'm just going to add a couple more. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the liabilities. I'm just going to add a few categories. And once I have these ones, if I scroll down below, you're going to see this also got filled automatically in the exact same order that I added them. And make sure that you never try to type in anything directly in here. If you do, you're going to get an error. So you have to undo your changes. So once you have your categories, the next step is adding individual assets and liabilities into every single one of these sections. So I'm going to start adding items into every single one of these categories. And super important, you can only create 10 categories for assets and 5 categories for liabilities. But within each category, you can have as many individual assets and liabilities as you like. All you have to do is add more rows, and there's a proper way to do it. So I'm just going to show you an example on this section. The first thing you have to do is select any number of rows that you like in the middle. So as you can see, I am not touching the first row of the section, and I am not touching the last row of this section. And you select rows by clicking on the row number and then dragging. So once it looks like this, you're going to right click and then select the option insert 3 rows below. And as you can see, I have 3 more rows down here. And if you need a lot of rows, what you can do is just add those 3 and then go ahead and select another group of rows in the middle. This time I'm going to add 6. And as you can see, now I can insert 6 rows below. So the same number of rows that you select is going to be the same number of rows that you can insert. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And super important, please remember when you do this, never touch the first or the last rows of each section. Just add rows in the middle. If at any point you added the wrong way, you're going to get this warning. So just immediately undo your changes. And the same thing is going to happen in the last row. If you insert something below and this happens, then just undo your changes and make sure that you are only adding rows in the middle. So I'm just gonna delete a few, and you can also delete them. Just make sure you only delete rows in the middle. I'm just gonna delete the entire thing, and that's how you add more rows. So I have a few items over here, and I'm gonna go ahead and add a couple more on every single one of these sections, and then also over here in the liability section. So I added a few items on every single one of these sections. And once you have your categories and once you have your individual assets and liabilities within each category, all you have to do is track your balances as often as you like. You have room for 13 columns in one tab. And the very first thing you have to do when you're registering your balances is set a date over here. To keep things accurate, it should be the exact date in which you are checking and registering your balances. To do that, you're going to double click on any of these cells and then a calendar is going to appear and you're going to pick a date. So I'm just going to pick any day in January, let's say January 1st. And once you have your date, you're going to scroll down and you're going to add a balance into every single one of your items and make sure that you are only using white cells. So this one is automated. If you type anything in here by accident, you're going to get notified. So just undo your changes and make sure you're only entering account balances on white cells. And then make sure that whenever you add a balance, there is also a name for that asset or liability in that same row. So if this happens, if this cell gets highlighted in yellow, that means that you added a balance somewhere in that row, and then this row does not have a name. So I'm just going to delete that, and I'm going to keep going. And of course, all of these are made up amounts, and all of the green area over here, these are assets. And I also added a little plus sign over here just to remind you that these are assets. And then I added a minus sign over here on every single one of these rows to remind you that these are liabilities. Super important, you will add liabilities as positive numbers. The spreadsheet is smart enough to know that these numbers should be subtracted from the assets, so you don't need to add them as negative numbers. If you add them as negative numbers, you will mess up the calculations. So as you can see right now, the amount of assets that I have is 154,065. So if I add that exact same number on any liability down here, my net worth should become 0. So you have the same amount of assets and the same amount of liabilities, which means your net worth in this case would be 0. So as you can see, you do not need to add this as negative numbers. If you add them as negative numbers, you're actually going to mess up the calculation and then you're going to end up with a bigger number, as you can see over here. So make sure you are never adding this as negative numbers. You can add them as the absolute amount that you owe, and they will be automatically subtracted from the assets. So I'm just gonna add in a few numbers over here in the liability section. And as you can see, as soon as I start adding liabilities, my net worth starts decreasing. So what I have over here are subtotals for every single one of these categories. And then these same subtotals are being shown up here on every single one of these rows. And nothing's happening over here because we just have one column. This is the starting balance. And also if you take a look at the other sections, there's not much going on because we only have one column filled out. So the initial net worth and the current net worth, they're going to be the same and no variation because we only have one column. You're not going to see much over here, your net worth, and then this tiny dot, those are your assets and those are your liabilities, this red dot. And you only have one row over here, no ranking because there was no variation and nothing to compare it to. So this starts getting interesting as soon as you start adding more columns. So when the time comes, you're going to jump into the next column and then you're going to register your balances again. So let's say it's been about a month. You can pick absolutely any date as long as it's the exact date in which you checked all of your balances. And as you can see over here, 34 days have gone by. And then right now it looks as if I lost my entire net worth, but that's because I haven't added anything over here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that for every single item. I'm going to add my new made up balances. And as you can see, every single time that I add something new, my net worth is getting updated automatically, and every single subtotal is also getting updated automatically. So I filled in some new amounts and this is my new net worth. So as you can see over here, I increased my net worth by $3,235. So you can see that over here, it's been 34 days since the last time I checked my net worth. And then you can see my total assets over here, total liabilities and subtotals for every single section once again. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in a couple more columns. So I filled in a couple columns, and as you might have noticed, every time I fill in a new column, this blue highlight gets moved around. So this blue highlight is signaling your current net worth. And this current net worth is going to be the date that is closest to the current day. And it's super important to note that this will only happen with days that are either in the past or that are the current day. So if I select May 6th, my current day, then it's still going to be blue. But if I select a date in the future, let's say May 7, that's tomorrow for me, then this isn't going to get highlighted as my current net worth because this date has not happened yet. So if I scroll to the right, you're going to see that my current net worth over here is also going to be April 5th because that's the closest date to today in the past. And to make sure that your dates are working properly, make sure that your time zone is set to wherever you are in the world. So if you want to check if that is set properly, you can click on File, Settings, and then over here you're gonna select wherever you are in the world in this time zone section over here. And once you set it, you can click on Save Settings again, and your dates are gonna be updating properly according to the time zone that you selected. So make sure that you don't add dates in the future. Make sure that you only add dates either in the past or the current day. So once I select today, May 6th, that's today for me, then this gets highlighted as my current net worth, and it's gonna be shown as my current net worth over here as well. And very important, never forget to add the date. If you add a balance and you don't add a date, it's gonna get highlighted signaling that you're missing a date. So make sure to always select a date over here, and make sure to always use this calendar just to make sure that you are adding in the proper date format for these numbers to work properly. So once I have my 5 columns, I can just scroll to the right, and you're gonna see now there's a lot more information over here and a lot more information over here. Again, my current net worth is getting highlighted. As you can see, it's the one I added on May 6th, and that's the one that's getting highlighted. Over here, basically, you just have the same information that you can see up here, but in a different layout. And then my ranking is getting updated automatically. So the time frame in which I increased my net worth the most in this example is from January 1st to February 4. So as you can see, it's this over here. So all of this is automated, and then the graphs are showing over here how much your net worth has been increasing. In this case, you can barely see it because I barely did anything different on these columns, but let's pretend that for some reason my house is worth more. So I'm just gonna add in a big number over here. So you can see the big bump in this graph. And then you can see how much your net worth has increased or decreased in the second graph right here. So as you can see, this 41,000 that my net worth increased from April to May in this example is the same thing you're seeing over here. So you have your initial net worth, your current net worth, how much your net worth has increased from the start to the current net worth. So that's what you're seeing up here. This is how much it has increased in these many days. And then if you have a net worth goal, you can add it over here. Let's say 200,000. And then this is going to be compared against your current net worth, and this is how much you're missing to reach that goal. And make sure that you are only editing this white cell, everything else is automated. And finally, if you scroll to the right, you're going to find a section that allows you to compare 2 columns. And all you have to do in this section is select the 2 columns that you want to compare. So you can use the first drop down to select the first column, and then the second drop down to select the second column. And these same numbers, as you can see, there's 13 numbers. These are the same numbers that you can find up here. So these numbers are just the column number. They are not necessarily tied to any particular month. If it matches your month, that's great, but if it doesn't, it doesn't matter. It's just the column number, and the main purpose of this column number is for you to be able to use this feature that allows you to compare 2 columns. So once you select them, everything loads automatically. Right now I'm comparing my column number 1 against column number 5, which is holding my current net worth at the moment. This is the number of days that have gone by. This is the total variation, and then down below you can sort of zoom in into every single section and see what changed. So in this case, if we jump into our house example, I increased it by 40,000, and that's what you're seeing over here. And then super important, make sure that of course you are always selecting 2 different columns, and that the column that has the oldest date appears first. So January 1st happened before May 6th, so this is the proper structure. If I do it the other way around and select column 5 first and then column 1, everything's still gonna happen, but the logic is all messed up, and then this is gonna get highlighted as an issue. So always make sure that the first column has the oldest date, and then you can compare any column against any column. So you have your column comparison over here, you have your graphs, you have your summaries, and finally the checkbox feature. What this does is it hides a category and all of its individual assets and liabilities from the totals. So in this case, you can see over here, as soon as I hide my physical assets, for example, my net worth decreases by a lot, and then the variation over here is also changing. So every single total, every single graph, every single summary, everything, even the column comparison table, is behaving as if this section that you hid did not exist. So every single balance that you added is still gonna be there, but as you can see, there's an X over here instead of a check mark. This is getting scratched, subtotals are getting scratched. You're seeing here that I have one hidden section, physical assets. You have over here a warning that there's one hidden section. So I try to let you know all over the place that there is one hidden section, and wherever you see things that are scratched with an X in this light yellow color, that means you have a box that's unchecked. So as you can see, I can uncheck this one as well, and then everything changes. So I added this feature so you could see how your net worth looks like and how your numbers look like and how everything looks like. If there is some stuff that you might not be able to access easily or in the short term, so you can hide whatever you want, and then you can hide everything if you like, and then just see a single category, for example. So as you can see, the only thing that I have checked right now is my savings, and everything else is getting scratched except for my savings category. So the spreadsheet is behaving as if only this row existed, and these are checked, but there's nothing there, so it doesn't matter. But the spreadsheet is behaving as if only my savings existed right now. So all of my summaries, my graphs, everything is being created only for my savings category, as you can see down here. And it's also happening on my column comparison table. I'm only seeing my savings. I'm only seeing my savings over here, and then everything else has an X and it's getting scratched. So you can still see individual items, but they are not being taken into consideration if their category name is scratched. So if I uncheck everything, you're gonna see that everything becomes 0. All totals are 0, all graphs, everything. And as I mentioned, every single individual item is still gonna be shown, but if their category is scratched, then it's not being taken into consideration. So I'm just gonna bring everything back. And then finally, make sure that you never add numbers into a category that doesn't have a name over here. So if I were to add an amount, it's going to be taken into consideration, but you can see that it's getting highlighted as an issue because there is no name for that category. There is no name for that individual asset. And if I scroll up here, I'm seeing the same error over here. So if I give it a category name, then that highlight is gone, but I'm still missing a name over here. So if I add one, then the highlight is gone. So be very aware of very bright yellow highlights that's signaling that something's going on. Very bright red highlights are signaling that you deleted an important formula. And then these very light yellow highlights are signaling that a category is being hidden, one or more categories. So I'm just gonna bring this back. And as I mentioned, you have 13 columns. And the reason why I added 13 columns is for you to be able to track an entire year, starting on somewhere around the first day of the year, and then tracking your balances once every month, as you can see in this example. And then column 12 is going to be December 1st in this example. So I already covered once a month, but I still need to close it up with an ending balance at the end of the year, or maybe somewhere around the first days of January, in case you want to save that information in this single tab. And the net worth tab includes 13 columns. So once you run out of columns, you need to start over on a new tab. And there's a couple different ways in which you can do that. The first option is you have a tab over here that we haven't used up until now, and it has a little lock on it. So this tab over here is your blank original. In case you ever need to start over, you can use this tab, right click, select the option duplicate, and then start over on a new year. And then you can start filling this out once again from the beginning. If you didn't like the structure that you used the previous year, you can change it. So this is how you start from scratch. You create a new copy from this tab right here. The second option is that you start filling in your tab, you add your categories, you add assets and liabilities within each category, and before you add any balances, you save this tab as your blank original. So you can name it blank original, for example. So let's make it look like you have some stuff in here. And once it's already filled out, you never touch any balances, you save this as your blank original, and then next year, once you run out of tabs, you can go ahead, right click, select the option duplicate, and then you can start over filling in your balances. You select a date, you add your balances, and you never touched your blank original, which already has your categories and your assets and your individual liabilities. So that's option number 2. You create your own blank original, and then you use that to create copies every time you run out of your 13 columns. And then the final option is using the one that you were using before. Let's say this is 2024. I'm just gonna delete this ones. So once you run out of your 13 columns, you can go ahead and duplicate the tab that you've been working on. Very important to create a copy of it, and then rename this new one, and then go ahead and delete every single balance. So you have to be very careful to only delete cells that have a white background. As you can see, I'm only deleting the balances that I added. You have to do this on every section, one at a time, making sure that you don't delete subtotals by accident. If you do, you're gonna get a warning, so you can just undo your changes. And once you delete everything, your net worth on every single column should be 0. Make sure every single box is checked, and then make sure every single subtotal is 0 in your summaries up here. Make sure that you don't have any red highlights, and if it's all looking good, then you can go ahead and delete your dates and then start over on column number 1. So the first option is to use this blank original. You should never edit it directly. It's just there so you can create copies from it. The second option is that you create your own blank original by filling in your categories, by adding in your assets and liabilities, and then leaving all your balances blank so you can create new copies without having to add in your texts again. And the final option is to create a copy from the tab that you've been working on and delete all balances to start over. And if you're interested in changing the colors, you can just click on Format, Theme, and then on this Customize button over here, and you're gonna see every single color that I used. So if I change this to maybe, let's do purple for our assets, and then a light color on the lighter shade, and then this is what it's gonna look like. You can make that prettier, and maybe a blue over here. So that's how those change automatically. And you can also, if you don't like this one, you can also just go ahead and maybe change the font directly. So that's how you can change the colors. You can also change them manually by selecting cells and then changing the background colors. So I'm just gonna undo my changes. And finally, you can also change the color of the progress bar. So right now this is what it looks like, and if you want to change the color, you can jump into your settings tab and then just change the hex value over here. And you can look for a hex value that you like online. Every single color has a hex value that represents it, but you can also find one within the spreadsheet. Just pick any random cell, click on this fill color button, click on the plus sign, and then play around and pick a color that you like. And once you have it, all you have to do is copy this entire value, click on cancel, and then paste that value over here. So as you can see, this is an example of how the progress bar will look like, and now it changed color over here as well. And finally, if you need to change any label, you can do that from this table right here. Every single label throughout the template is going to be found on this table. Even this emoji right here that is being used for this ranking, you can change that as well. So you never have to try to change the labels over here. You can just change them from this table. So that's all you need to know, and we're done. So that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I love talking to you and helping. If you don't already have the template, you can find a link to purchase it in the description down below. So don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you like my work, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.